And let's make a deal. If you think I proved this theory in this class, please donate $10 to the Karaite Press. If you think I didn't prove this theory in this class, go donate $20 to the Karaite Press, okay? And if you just lost interest completely, just go donate $30 to the Karaite Press. And the idea is if you donate $30, what you're telling me is, Sean, find better material and frankly, find better presenters. All right, I am back. I first gave this presentation on June 30th, and after the presentation, several people approached me and said, you have to record this one. It has tremendous value, and I think what they're really saying is it was far more interesting than some of the other ones, but I will try to record those too. So this is a talk on an introduction to Karaite liturgy. I first gave this on June 30th. It was Erev, my birthday. My birthday is July 1. I turned the big 4-1, and I was actually blessed and honored to be joined by James Walker, who played some live music during this class. And June 30th is his birthday. So for his birthday and the Erev my birthday, we got together and we did this class together, and it was a lot of fun. All right, we're going to talk about the Karaite liturgy. I want to be really clear. I am not focusing on Karaite prayer, right? Prayer includes more than liturgy. Prayer includes the form of prayer, whether you raise your hands, whether you sit down, whether you kneel, whether you have to stand upright. We'll touch on those issues very slightly, but we're going to talk about liturgy. Liturgy is how the prayer book is composed, or how the vehicle in which we pray, the words which we use, how those are put together. So we're going to focus on liturgy. I am not going to do a comparison of Karaite and Rabbinite liturgy for several reasons. One, I don't have time to think about those issues anymore, sadly. But I have read a great book on it. It's called The Karaite Liturgy and Its Relationship to Synagogue Worship by P. Selvin Goldberg. If you have access to this book, go read it. It does do a very fair and very good comparison, at least from my perspective, on the Karaite and Rabbinite liturgy. So check that book out. Today, we're only focusing on the Karaite liturgy. We're going to start off with a little bit of a detour, or maybe it's a frolic. We're going to start off with something called the mantra, and a lot of you have seen this online. It was spectacularly popular, released about 9 months ago, last November, but had been worked on for several months before that. And many of you have seen it online. It's up on YouTube. And by the way, as of like right now, it is also available on all your favorite streaming services. So go give us a listen, give us a download. My purpose of starting here is so you understand how the mantra fits into Karaite liturgy. Okay, so the mantra was put together by Nir Nassim and Hazan Rotem Cohen, and obviously if you've heard it, there are many people who are singing with Hazan Rotem Cohen, and it's really just unbelievably beautiful. And it starts together, it's got these 5 verses, right? And you start off at the top and you go counterclockwise, so you go from 1, who am I but dust and ashes, to 2, great is the Lord and should be praised highly, and his greatness is unsearchable. 3, the Lord is close to all who call upon him and those who seek him in truth. Number 4 on the bottom right there, you're asking God to accept your prayer. Oh Lord, accept my prayer and let my supplication reach you. And number 5, thanking God. I will thank you for you've answered me and you have become my salvation. Okay, so these are the 5 verses, and we'll talk more about these verses as we go through this. Okay. Another aspect about this is that in addition to weaving the verses together, if you've heard this is an issue of call and response. The Chazan says something, and the Kahal, or some people might call them backup singers, but truthfully, the congregation responds in a manner that is consistent with the Chazan's call. So it starts off with Mi Anochi Afar Ve'efer, and the Kahal, the backup singers, the congregation, however you want to look at it, responds with Mi Anochi Afar Ve'efer.
Mi Anochi Afar Ve'efer, Mi Anochi Afar Ve'efer, Mi Anochi Afar Ve'efer, Mi Anochi Afar Ve'efer, Mi Anochi. Okay,
what I want to prove to you is that even though the mantra is not historical, meaning this collection of 5 verses did not exist together historically. It was only came up they only came up with it in the last year or so. Even though it is not historical, I want to prove to you that it is 100% traditional. Okay, so collection of verses, call and response, 100% traditional. And let's make a deal. If you think I proved this theory in this class, please donate $10 to the Karaite Press. Okay, you can do that at karaitepress.com. Just click on the donate button at the top. Do that. If you think I didn't prove this theory in this class, right? You listened to this course and you thought, all right, Sean, I was entertained, but you didn't prove your theory. Go donate $20 to the Karaite Press, okay? And if you just lost interest completely, just go donate $30 to the Karaite Press. And the idea is if you donate $30, what you're telling me is, Sean, find better material and frankly, find better presenters. And I'm happy to do that. Just donate $30. I would be thrilled. Now, I know you think the incentives are set up really poorly here, right? Like why should I get paid more for sucking, right? And the answer is I shouldn't. I don't make any money off of this. But the idea is that if you think that this was not interesting to you at all, donate $30. Tell me what you want me to talk about. I'll do it. Okay, I'll figure out a way to get some research done. I'll get some more books translated. We'll do whatever we can. All right, so that's the deal. And let's see how we do here. Okay, so if we're going to talk about the Karaite liturgy, we have to start with the Karaite Siddur. The compiler of the Karaite Siddur in its current use is Chacham Aaron ben Joseph, Aaron the first, not to be confused with another Aaron, Aaron ben Elijah, who is Aaron the second. So every Karaite Siddur that you see today, I'll say virtually, but for the most part, every printed Karaite Siddur you see today is somehow based on the Siddur of Chacham Aharon ben Yosef, Aaron the first. And if you are familiar with the Karaite service, so every Shabbat when we read the Piyut Parashah, the poem for the Torah portion, every Shabbat when we read the poem for the Torah portion, that's written by this guy, Chacham Aharon ben Yosef. He is the compiler of the Karaite Siddur. In the 15th century, there's a Karaite scholar, Karaite Jewish scholar named Yosef ben Mordecai, Joseph ben Mordecai of Troki. He writes about the beauty of Chacham Aaron's prayer book. He says, we have examined the liturgical orders presented in them. So we've examined the prayers in them, right? I.e. in Chacham Aharon's prayer book and 2 others. And by the way, one of the others is Chacham Aharon's father. So his name is Aaron ben Joseph. His father is Joseph. So he looked at, so Joseph ben Mordecai looked at the prayer book of Chacham Aharon, his father, Aharon's father, and one more. And they chose the prayer book of Aaron because it is ordered nicely and arranged well, and the strings of biblical verses show its beauty. The strings of biblical verses show its beauty. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. Strings of biblical verses showing the beauty of the prayer book and the beauty of the prayers themselves and the liturgical orders presented in it. I just want to point out to you the Chacham Aaron Siddur was used as the basis for the first printed Karaite Siddur in 1528. It's known as the Venice Karaite Siddur. Okay, so here is an example of strings of verses woven together and some of the beauty. In this passage, you will see that the word, the concept of return or turning, shuv is the first Hebrew word there I circled. It repeats over and over, and it repeats 4 times. So shuv, so shuv mecharon apecha v'nem al hara lamecha, shuv leman avadecha. Then hashivenu from shuv again, same root. Adonai alecha. Then ashuva, shuv, right there. Okay, so 4 times in 3 verses you have this concept of turning, and one is from the book of Exodus, one is from the book of Isaiah, and one is from the book of Lamentations. And then at the end you see Psalms 89:53 in green. The reason why it's in green is that's actually a biblical verse where the Chazan says Baruch Adonai Le'olam, and the Kahal, the backup singers, the congregation, like in the mantra, respond Amen ve'Amen. Okay, so you can see all these biblical verses woven together. And in some of these biblical verses, not all of them, but in some of these biblical verses, you have this concept of turn. Here's example 2. Now we're in a situation where we have 2 different roots are prominent, 2 different biblical themes, 2 different linguistic roots are prominent. The roots relate to praise, so Hallel, Tehilati, right? That's praising, which you see boxed in red, and proclaiming, which is related to like proclaiming or retelling, and you see the first one there in green is Yesaperu, okay? That's in green. And you can see the passage goes from being predominantly about retelling, so predominantly about green, and shifting towards being about praising in red. Okay? Now, just so you see, this is another example of where the Chazan starts Amzu Yetzarti Li, and in this prayer book there's a little asterisk, and the Kahal, the backup singers, say Tehilati Yesaperu. Okay? Amzu Yetzarti Li. That's what the Chazan says. Right? And then the Kahal responds Tehilati Yesaperu. Okay? And you could see here, I put this for you in English: declare, tell, proclaim, recounted in green. Tell, recount, proclaim, right? All these are linguistically related, and they're from different verses. So you have, the first one is Isaiah 43:21. And then it's linked right away with that same linguistic root of recounting, retelling from Psalms 96:3. And then it goes to Psalms 118, and then it goes to Psalms 102, then Psalms 992, right? So all the way through, you could see how many different verses, and I count 8 different sections woven together. And I say sections and not verses because one of these is like Psalms 22, 23 to 24, so 2 verses together. At the very end, you see Psalms 135, 1 through 4, so I guess 4 verses together. So all of these different sections are woven together to bring these themes together. So 2 linguistic themes: to stay, to tell, to declare, to recount, and to praise, all woven together, okay? All right, here's example 3. Now, this is the last example I'm going to give, and I want you to take a moment and read this for yourself and figure out whether or not you can spot the themes there. So we saw one with 1 theme, then we saw one with 2 themes. If you can sense a pattern here, you might be able to guess how many themes you're going to look for here. And if you want to pause the screen so you could do that, go ahead and do that, but I'm going to just keep going here, okay? Okay. So here's the first theme. The first theme is circled in green. It's about fearing, right? Now, fearing, in a biblical concept, this word fear, right? So the first circle there is uvirat, and the fear, or yurat, and yurat again, and yuretem. This concept of fearing is also related to the concept of worshiping. So when you say like the fear of the Lord is also the worship of the Lord, okay? So truth and righteousness expiate iniquity, and evil is avoided through fear of the Lord, worship of the Lord, okay? And you see one is from Proverbs, another one's from another proverb, another one's from another proverb. And then you get to this last one where it's translated as shrink. It says, how did you not shrink from speaking against my servant Moses? And if you understand, like linguistically, it's from the same root. To shrink from is to be afraid of. How are you not afraid from speaking against my servant Moses? Okay, so that's the first concept you'll see. Now, the second concept you see is you have anava, right? So I'm just reading the first word that's circled there, right? Anava, anavim, anav, okay? And you have this word humility, or being humble. And it says that the fear of the Lord is a discipline of wisdom, right? So there's fear. And the second part of that verse, humility precedes honor. So if you want honor, you need to be humble first. V'ha'ish Moshe anav me'od. Okay, and Moses was a humble man, more so than any other man on earth. Okay, and Moses was a humble man. So again, you have worship or fear, you have humility woven together. Okay, and then now here's a third theme: is Moses. V'ha'ish Moshe anav me'od. So you want to talk about Moses, you have to talk about humility. Well, if you're going to talk about humility, you don't just like pull it out of nowhere. Let's have some introductory verses in that first paragraph. About truth and righteousness, or bechesed ve'emet, and let's start talking about humility there. So you have Veish Moshe anav me'od, and then you at the very end you see Moses is mentioned a couple of times, and this all leads up to Tefillah LaMoshe. Okay, so it all leads up to this prayer of Moses, and it's almost as if, not almost, I'm almost certain that the person who compiled the Siddur wanted to get to Tefillah LaMoshe, wanted to get to a prayer of Moses. And I'm saying he because I'm 99.99999% certain it's a man, and that man is Aharon ben Yosef, but we'll talk about that in a second. He says, I want to get to Tefillah LaMoshe. Like, how do I do that? Okay, if I want to get to Tefillah LaMoshe, let me start with the Velo Kam before that, because the Velo Kam says, and there did not rise a prophet like Moses, whom the Lord singled out face with. Okay, great. Velo Kam Naviod is an easy way to get to why an introduction for the prayer of Moses. Okay, now if I want to get to Velo Kam Navi Od Be'Yisrael Kemoshe, there's never been a prophet in Israel like Moses. How do I get there? Well, okay, let's talk about Moses being a humble man. Ve'ish Moshe Anav Me'od. Okay, now if I want to get to Moses being a humble man, let's start talking about humility, right? And how do I start talking about humility? Let's put in the Bechesed Ve'emet Yechupar Avon in that paragraph. Let's put it there, okay? And let's talk about humility. So you got humility precedes honor, and the effect of humility, and that gets to the lowly stature, like meaning the humble, the people who have humility shall inherit the earth, and that's what gets you to Vayish Moshe Anav Me'od. Okay, so what happened here is that the person compiling Siddur, I'm almost certain that this is how he's thinking about this. The person compiling Siddur is like, I want to do Tefillah Moshe. I want to talk about this verse. I want us to sing this verse, these verses, this prayer, I should say, of Moses, right? And I want to get there by building up this concept of what are the things associated with Moses. Okay, he's humble. Okay, what do I know about humility? And I've got a whole bunch of proverbs on humility. Let's put those things together, right? And then I can get to Moses as a humble man. There's never been a prophet like Moses, and here's the prayer of Moses. Okay, here's Tefillah Moshe. All right. The mantra, verses woven together. We talked about this. You've seen this now with 3 different examples, very simple ones to very detailed ones. And by the way, I should say, like I've examined the Karaite Prayerbook. Of all of the verses that are woven together in the Karaite Prayerbook, this example 3 is my favorite. Okay, this example 3 is my favorite. I love it. Okay, so we've talked about this, verses woven together. And this is exactly what the mantra is, right? So it starts off with a verse that's actually non-biblical. NB there means non-biblical. And it's Mi Anochi Afar Va'efer. The biblical line is Ve'anochi Afar Va'efer. So it's based on that, and we'll talk about where Mi Anochi Afar Va'efer comes from in a second. And then it goes to Psalms 145:3, then Psalms 145:18, then Psalms 102:2, and then Psalms 118:21. So this is what Nir Nassim, who collected these verses and potentially also Rotem Cohen, who helped collect these voices, did. They came up with something that is exactly in the same tradition of the historical Karaite prayers, and they gave it a new composition, and they gave it a new feel. Okay, so again, not itself historical, but 100% traditional. Aha, remember our deal. Okay, so like if you think I've proved it, go donate $10. If you think I'm not proving it, go donate 20. And if you think that you just lost interest, just go donate 30 and I'll get better. I promise you I'll get better. Okay. Okay, so let's talk about Hacham Aharon's introduction to the Siddur. You know, this Siddur that you're taking, I've got a screenshot for you there on the left, is from the Siddur put together by Neria Haroe from our community in Israel. And he used to be a typesetter, I believe, for the Hebrew University in Jerusalem. And so that's why his Siddur always looks beautiful, because he used to be a typesetter. He knows what he's doing. Anyway, this is the Erev Shabbat Siddur. And it's got some introduction where it says, this is the introduction presented by the great Rabbi Hacham Aharon ben Yosef, whose soul is in paradise. He put together for us this prayer book as appears after this introduction. Okay, so now here's the introduction. This is what the words of Aharon ben Yosef. Therefore, you find these prayer postures. I told you I was not really going to focus on this, but here's the extent of it. Keeping the legs together, spreading out palms, lifting up and spreading out hands, lifting up eyes, bending the head, prostration, kneeling, bending the knees, and other conditions that are indicated in the words of the prophets. So he's doing this so that people don't forget how to pray in a biblical manner. So he's putting in verses that talk about prostrating and putting the head to the earth and standing up and lifting up your eyes and your hands. Okay. This is like amazing to me that he even writes this, but it's awesome because no one talks like this anymore. I mean, maybe no one that I know talks like this anymore, but he's like, why did I put this prayer book together? For the times cause us to be involved with people that do not deserve even our greetings. Their eyes are in heaven, so they're looking to God, but their mind is in the gutter. Now, look, the mind is in the gutter is not a literal translation. It's definitely what is meant here. Literally, it says their heart is between the oven and the stove. Their heart is between the oven and the stove. Now, you have to understand, in biblical times and in biblical understanding, the heart, not the mind, the heart was the seat of knowledge. So it's saying their heart is between the oven and the stove. And this is an old expression that also appears in the Talmud, between the oven and the stove. And and I'm trying to remember the exact rabbi, but I believe it was Rabbi Yehuda on the 9th of Av, which in the rabbinic tradition is the time they mourn the destruction of the temples. The Karaites have the 7th and the 10th of Av, okay? We won't get into that today, but on the 9th of Av, this rabbi, it says in Talmud, had the custom of sitting between the oven and the stove, and he would eat stale bread with salt, okay? And so I guess for you to understand the oven and the stove, like why it's considered the most lowly place of the house is like, like think about it today when you're cooking and you've got like your stove and it's right next to your counter, and that spot between the stove and the counter where all the food and crumbs fall and you just never clean that. Think of that as like the spot between the oven and the stove. It's just like filth and grease, and maybe like noodles have fallen in there, and ground beef has fallen in there. And because I'm a Karaite, I'll say some milk and meat has fallen in there. But that's really what that's getting at. It's like, okay, so he says, back to our introduction, says, the times cause us to be involved with people that do not deserve even our greetings, for their eyes are in heaven, but their mind is in the gutter. They are empty in their prayer, meaning they're just saying words. They spread out their legs. Remember earlier I said you got to keep your legs together according to this, right? You guys spread out their legs and do other wrong things. And their words are not good. But the Lord God is true. May he lead us in the path of truth and rescue his servants, meaning Israel, from the people of Israel, from evildoers. Okay? Then this is my favorite. I guess it's all my favorite. It says, were it not for the fools, meaning I, Aharon ben Yosef, would have changed the prayer book in most places, but maybe I should refrain, for perhaps then unworthy people would start to butt their heads into various matters that they have never seen, not even in a dream. Therefore, I'll walk in the path of my forebears, or our forebears, and may my help be from the rock. So what he's saying is, I would have changed the prayer book. And remember, I told you earlier that the scholar Joseph ben Mordechai of Troki, he looked at other prayer books and examined them, including the one of Aaron's father. Now, Aaron is telling you, I would have changed the prayer book, but I decided to continue this tradition of the prayer books that I've inherited, because I don't want any fool to butt their heads and start changing the prayer book. Now, look, I'm sorry to say this to you, Hacham Aharon, I am going to change the prayer book at some point. I will be a fool who will butt my head into matters that I should not have even butt my head in, and maybe things I've never even seen in a dream. Okay, we're going to talk about preparing for prayer now. There's a part where we enter the synagogue, and before we actually start the prayer, we put on our CCOs, and we say this verse here, Mi anochi afar va'efer, Mi anochi afar va'efer, right? So like if you were paying attention, you know that that's the start of the mantra, Mi anochi afar va'efer, Rima v'toleah. And like, again, nobody talks like this again, but who am I but dust and ashes? People talk like that, but then it says of worm and maggot, vanity and emptiness, that I should merit standing in prayer before the great and awesome King. And again, Mi anochi afar va'efer is from the mantra. And I think maybe I'll stop here and just explain to you how the mantra is conducted, or not stop here. I will pause here from the Siddur and talk about the mantra is conducted, right? On the top, I am humble, right? I'm humbling myself. I am dust and ashes. The next verse, Gadol Adonai Hula Meod, it says, even though I am dust and ashes, God is great, and there's a great distance between us, okay? Right, so I am very, very small, God is great, and God's greatness is unsearchable. So we're setting up this dichotomy, this distance between me and God, okay? Then the verse after that on the bottom left says, even though, right, this is the concept, even though we are separated by such distance, okay? Even though we are separated by such distance, God is still close to all the people who call upon him truth. So even though I am dust and ashes, and God's greatness is unsearchable, and there's like this massive dichotomy between me and God, God is still close to the people who call upon him. Okay? And then on the bottom right, asking God, we're calling upon God, we're asking God, accept my prayer, let my supplication reach you. Okay? And then on the top right, I will thank you, right? I will thank you for you have answered me, is thanking God for answering us. So I'm small, God is large, top to the top left. Then on the bottom left, I'm small, God is large. God is still close to people who call upon him. The bottom right, I'm going to call upon you, and I will thank you for calling upon me. And if you listen to the mantra, the musical tone reflects these verses, right? So these themes. So it's Mi anochi afar va'efer. It's very humble and solemn, right? And then by the time you get to the very last verse, it's happy because you are thankful that God has answered your prayer. And you can hear it if you listen to it. Again, so mi anochi afar va'efer we talked about, and well, look at that. Karov Adonai l'chol korav l'chol asher yikru ve'emet. That's right there in the mantra, right? So you go back here, you could see this opening prayer about humbling ourselves has two of the phrases or verses that are used in the mantra. The passage mi anochi afar va'efer is definitely not, or 99.999% certainty, not of Karaite origin. It appears in rabbinic Kabbalistic Siddur. But there's nothing, as far as I can tell, Kabbalistic about this, and the Karaites probably took it from the rabbinic Siddur at some point, or they both got it from some earlier composition. And we have looked in various Karaite Siddurim and manuscripts, and the old ones don't have mi anochi afar va'efer. So we know that this is not part of Rabbi Aharon ben Yosef's prayer book. Okay, 7 elements of prayer. We're going to talk about how the prayer liturgy is conducted. There's praise, there's thanks, there's confession, there's request. That's number 4 there. Number 5 is supplication. And I want to just talk to you about 5 in relation to 4. Supplication is begging God to forgive our sins on account of God's loving kindness, okay, on account of God's own loving kindness, right? This is different from request, because in the request part, so number 4, we focus on our own mortality and our own flaws of mankind. But in supplication, we focus on God's greatness and ask God's to grant our request because of God's greatness, okay? Or grant our prayers because of God's greatness. Okay, and then there's 2 more: crying out and calling out. Only a minority of the Karaite sages held that these 2 are required parts of prayer. So let's go through these fairly quickly. Okay, praise. Adonai shimati tefiloti v'shavati elecha tavo. This is actually the first line of the Karaite prayer. It says Tefilat Erev Shabbat. So the mi anochi afar va'efer is preparing to pray. This is the first line of the prayer. Okay, and if you're paying attention, you will know that this is actually also in the mantra. It's the bottom right there. Oh Lord, accept my prayer. And in the mantra, it's so funny, right? Like whenever I try to pray, I try to be the Chazan in a traditional service, I can only hear the tune of the mantra for this line in my mind. And sometimes I have to struggle to get the actual tune of the prayer, like as we traditionally say, in my mind, so I can start off the prayers correctly, because I only have the tune of the mantra here. Okay. And you could see, oh Lord, hear my prayer, let my cry come before you. And then we go to some verses of praise, right? How lovely is your dwelling place, O Lord. I long and yearn for the courts of the Lord. And it's better to be one day in your courts than 1,000 elsewhere. I would rather stand at the threshold of God's house than dwell in the tents of the wicked. So we're praising God here, okay? And this Maya Didot, how lovely is your dwelling place, is well known among Karaites as far as the Friday night liturgy. It's really, really well known, and it's absolutely beautiful. It's actually probably one of my favorite prayers. And maybe when I post this, I'll tell you how to go and listen to all this stuff. Okay. All right, let's go to thanks. And again, we're thanking God for creating and sustaining the world here. That's what thanks is. Adonai Eloheinu Boreinu Go'aleinu Yitzreinu Kedoshenu Yachid Be'olamo Emet. The Lord our God, our Creator, our Redeemer, our Holy One is unique in the world. We're unique in His world, and this is true. Okay. Hoda'a Adonai ki tov ki olam chasto. Again, the Chazan says Hoda'a Adonai ki tov. The Kahal, the congregation, the backup singers say ki leolam chasto. By the way, Hoda'a Adonai ki tov is thank God, or give thanks to God, or praise to God, for He is good. Okay. The word hodu, to thank, also means to acknowledge, right? That's the roots of this word, is to acknowledge. And when you thank somebody, you are acknowledging what they've done for themselves, what they've done for you, sorry. When you thank somebody, you're acknowledging something that they've done. That's what thanks is. Just remember, in our modern society, sometimes we just say thank you out of rote, and we're not actually paying attention to the fact that to thank somebody is an acknowledgement. Thanks. But when you actually stop and pause and say thank you, and look at somebody and think, at least acknowledge in your heart that they have done something, you will be better at acknowledging them verbally, and you will be able to thank them verbally a little bit better. So you have Hoda'a Adonai ki tov ki olam chasto, and then we go all the way through this. You can see this little break here on the page, and the reason the break is there is that we've skipped a bunch of lines here in the traditional Karaite liturgy. It's just common to go from this line et hayerech to shebeshifleinu zachar lanu. Okay. Confession and request. We'll just do these together. But we have done wickedly. That's confession, right? Right there. I've highlighted for you. We have done wickedly. And now let's talk about request. That's highlighted in green. Here's my request. Turn away from thy wrath and repent of this evil against thy people for thy servant's sake. Okay. So we have done evil. Pardon our iniquity. That's our request. Pardon our iniquity. We have messed up. Let's talk about supplication. Now remember, the difference between supplication and request is that supplication focuses on God's characteristics because of thy greatness. Do it for your own sake. Whereas that's supplication. Whereas request was, we are evil. We confess, and I'm requesting you on account of our own sin. This is about for you, okay? Do it because of your own compassion, about your characteristics. That's what supplication is. We're not going to look at numbers 6 and 7 because, again, not all the Karaite sages say that it's required. So not every Karaite prayer has them expressly called out. Okay, let's finish the mantra bingo card, right? We've seen that 3 out of the 5 verses of the mantra are from the Karaite liturgy. Now, actually, frankly, it wouldn't matter if none of the 5, they're all biblical verses except for the first one, which is a paraphrase. But so it would be consistent with the Karaite liturgy. But these are all verses that are in the Karaite liturgy. Look here, Odecha ki anitani v'atei li Yeshua is said basically right before the Torah service. By the way, this part here so this is one of the mantra verses. This part here that's in big and bold, that is a line that someone from the congregation reads and the entire congregation responds. So again, literally, I'm going to say something and everybody repeats after me, call and response. Okay. And then again, read after the service is the last one, Gadol Adonai Halal Me'od, V'ligdulato Ein Cheker. Great is the Lord and much acclaimed. His greatness cannot be fathomed. So I said unsearchable earlier. I think cannot be fathomed is another way to translate that. And so again, these 5 verses from the mantra are in the Karaite liturgy. I want you now to stop and reach into your pockets and think to yourself, has Sean proven his case that the mantra, even though it's not historical, is 100% traditional? If I have not proven my case, go and donate. I guess if you made it to basically the end now, go donate $20. If you are not going to make it like 2 more slides, donate $30 because there's 2 more slides left. And if you think I've proved my case, just donate $10. I would really appreciate that. This is all for a good cause. I don't make any money off this. Okay. And here's the concluding prayer. Baruch Shemcha. This is actually from Karaite sources. We find this in Karaite manuscripts, and this is how you conclude the prayer. And the Chazan says Baruch Shemcha, and everybody answers Baruch Shemcha Elohei Elohim V'Adnei Adonim. Okay, and so blessed be your name, God of gods and Lord of lords. And many of the elements that we talk about elements of prayer are here in this verse, right? Not 100%, I don't think, but most of them, right? So. Blessed be your name, God of gods and Lord of lords. You created me in your great mercies. We talk about God's mercy. And we talk about you alone are the Lord, an exalted King, and extolled and sanctified. Now, if I have found favor in your eyes, receive my supplication and grant my request. Do not scorn my prayer, nor leave me frustrated. Do not hide your face from me. I am in distress. I have no father but you. So all these concepts we see in other places in the Karaite prayer. And they are very closely related, if not 100% related, to the elements of prayer that we just talked about. Okay, thank you for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this. I will record some of the other ones, and take good care. I hope everyone's safe and healthy out there. Bye-bye.